Hi, everyone. Welcome to Harnessing Nature-Based Solutions for Climate Resilience and Brownfield Restoration. I'm Jaleesa Gilmore, the Senior Manager of Environmental Justice Programs at Groundwork USA. I'm joined by my co-host, John Valanche, the Senior Manager of Equity and Resilience Programs at Groundwork USA. And so before we get started, for those of you who aren't familiar with Groundwork USA, we're an environmental nonprofit that's the national support organization to over 20 people-centered, community-based organizations that we call Trust. So our Groundwork Trusts work around the country to address a history of environmental injustices while transforming urban neighborhoods. And so the network's mission is to create communities that are healthy, green, and resilient. And we do this through transforming neglected land and waterways, increasing resilience to climate and environmental issues, increasing access to healthy food, and cultivating the next generation of environmental leaders. And so this webinar that we're here for today is supported through our technical assistance program for Brownfield's equitable development. This work is funded by the EPA to offer free technical assistance for communities to incorporate equitable development and environmental justice into their brownfields projects. And so we work with municipalities, nonprofits, community groups, and other stakeholders to provide that support. And so there's three pieces of it. So the first one is this webinar, workshops and trainings, and just a series of these workshops and trainings to really help build local capacity for incorporating equitable development, environmental justice principles into brownfields projects. We also offer direct technical assistance to clients nationwide based on their self-identified needs as it relates to key areas. And then we also have a visual resource library of guides to demonstrate community engagement and other aspects of the redevelopment projects. So check out our website for more information. And so before we get started with the webinar, I introduce our speakers. I want to give a little bit more context to the conversation that we'll be having today around climate change, brownfields, and nature-based solutions. And so we all know that climate change is happening now. This summer alone, we've seen wildfires burning, destroying land and property, air pollution from these fires traveling hundreds of miles. We've seen devastating floods throughout the country, and we've seen a majority of the country under heated fire advisories and seeing record-breaking temperatures. We also know that communities of color and low-income communities are on the front lines of climate change, disproportionately feeling these risks. Areas that already have higher rates of asthma because of truck traffic, or more risk from air pollution because of wildfire smoke. Communities with less green space, parks, more concrete, more paved roads are more likely to experience this extreme heat. And the communities that have outdated sewer infrastructure can't handle the storm water associated with these storms and increased flooding. We also know that these same communities have multiple environmental burdens, and brownfields are usually one of them. And brownfields being land that's potentially being redeveloped, but it's complicated by contamination with hazardous substances, pollutants, petroleum, or other contaminants. These are commonly identified by their past use, whether it's commercial or residential buildings or former rail lines, or manufacturing space that has, evidence of dumping or even just illegal dumping on vacant land. And so we know that these vacant spaces, these brownfields, are not only a blight on neighborhoods, they encourage illegal dumping and can encourage crime in certain instances. They're also vulnerable to climate change as well. Flooding can bring contamination into areas. And so we know that there's 450,000 brownfields estimated in communities throughout the US, and populations living next to brownfield sites are more likely to be communities of color or low-income communities. With all that said, we can look at reusing brownfields as a solution for addressing all of these issues in environmental justice communities, to reuse this land in a way that really benefits the community, that provides social, economic, and health benefits for the people who are dealing with these issues. And so more and more people are realizing the benefits of holistic solutions to community issues, and nature-based solutions are solutions that can help with the brownfield issues, but also climate resilience. And so nature-based solutions can be defined as solutions to protect, manage, or restore ecosystems while addressing societal changes and providing benefits for people in the environment. This can be from rain gardens to microforests to restoring coral reefs. And this can help with greening neighborhoods, which can help with cooling spaces, improving air quality, mitigating flooding. And so this land transformation can not only transform the land, but transform the community. Vacant spaces or brownfields are also sometimes seen as a way to profit, and we want to do profit generating uses, but also green space. We can create GI jobs, green infrastructure jobs. We can prevent the damage from improperly managed flooding. They also have a lot of tangible cost saving benefits, but they also provide free community spaces, provide local jobs, provide opportunities for stewardship and maintenance and community involvement, as well as increasing opportunities for physical health and improving mental health. And so with all of that said, we will hear from Todd and Jonathan about how they've transformed vacant or underutilized spaces in their communities by prioritizing nature-based solutions such as green infrastructure, microforest, and more. And so to introduce our speakers, Jonathan Phillips has been the executive director of Groundwork Elizabeth since its inception. He has introduced successful youth development programming in the form of a Groundwork Elizabeth Green Team, led the successful development of the Elizabeth River Trail Phase 1, facilitated urban water support and programming focused on the Elizabeth River, created a brownfield task force, and has secured millions of dollars in funding to support environmentally focused activities in Elizabeth and the surrounding Union County communities. We'll also hear from Todd Reynolds. He's the executive director of Groundwork New Orleans. He has over 30 years of extensive experience in education, youth development, advocacy, project management, and design, build, construction. Todd has spent the majority of his career advocating for young people. He has a rock-solid commitment to educating and empowering youth from underserved communities throughout the country. Todd holds a Master of Science in Community and Economic Development from the University of Southern New Hampshire and is certified to install and teach the National Green Infrastructure Program, Center for Watershed Protection GI Certificate Program, as well as certified in quality control for government contractors through the United States Army Corps of Engineers. So thank you both to Todd and Jonathan for joining us today. I'm excited to hear what you all have to present. So with that, I will hand it over to Todd.
Thank you, Jalissa, for that introduction. And I'm not sure we got that picture. We'll talk about that later. But thank you. So today, once again, my name is Todd Reynolds. I am the executive director of Groundwork New Orleans. I am also a Groundwork USA board member. I took over Groundwork New Orleans roughly 5 years ago. And we have done several green infrastructure projects around New Orleans as a part of our ground crew program. Today we're going to talk about the Vision to Reality Stormwater Park, and it was titled that because the residents of the 7th Ward and the community members of the 7th Ward, working with Dr. Angela Chalk of Healthy Community Services, I had been tasked to come up with 5 priority projects to do within the 7th Ward. And amongst their group, as you can see all their team members here, they decided that the Claiborne site would be their #1 priority project. And through working with Groundwork, Health and Community Services was gracious enough to let Groundwork New Orleans construction manage the project, but also bring in other green infrastructure team members who do the similar training, like LA Green Corps and NOTEP. So a combination of Groundwork, LA Green Corps, and NOTEP built this site. The site is 2 phases. Phase 1, as you can see on this picture, the left was what it looked like before we got there, which is just an open, muddy, rutted out field that had been that way for years and years and years. And I'll talk about the history. And then the final project you can see on the right is a 200-foot, 37,000 gallon bioswale that can manage 37,500 gallons of stormwater per rain event. So it's a pretty large bioswale. So that was phase 1. But let's talk about the history a little bit. So originally, Claiborne Avenue was one of the largest Black economic and cultural hubs here in the city. And as you can see, previous pictures of Claiborne Avenue, specifically the picture on the right, which was basically an internal city forest that ran for miles and miles and miles, and people could go out and get shade, go under the trees. There's several community events that were always held there throughout the community. But unfortunately, in the 1960s, through urban renewal, in quotes, this internal beautiful forest was destroyed in lieu of an overhead expressway that runs the length of the city east to west. So our job, as we look at green infrastructure and nature-based solutions and kind of reclaiming what we can up and down the Claiborne corridor. This is one of many projects that we'll be doing over the next couple of years. But like I said, we took this plot of land through our workforce development program, and then we constructed once I said, a 200-foot bioswale full with external overflow drainage, over 600 native plants, 15 trees. And you can see in the bottom right picture how this was what we call a rain bomb here in New Orleans. Bottom right picture, we got 6 inches of rain in about 1 hour on this rainstorm, and the bioswale held up greatly. It only took about 2 hours to drain. There was maybe a little bit of overflow. We've kind of documented that, but it really did its job in creating a stormwater asset for the Claiborne community. So that was phase 1. It took us about a year to do phase 1. Phase 2, as we started to develop this, originally there was no phase 2. Groundwork had done a similar project, but not as big as this, but a pretty large scale, where we created a community park called Legacy Park. So as we constructed this bioswale and this stormwater asset, there was several other parts of the land that was not being used. So we came up with the idea with creating an actual stormwater community park, which we would design for community members. It will have some more stormwater features. It will also have solar features, and just being able to create a quality, safe outdoor space, green space. One of the high points of this construction, we will be bringing in 15 basically full-grown trees, maybe 6 or 7 caliper, as we did in Legacy Park, which will create instant tree canopy, instant cooling for the residents as they sit out on the new walkways, on the shade structures, on the benches. So we're really looking forward to completing this project. We will be doing major planting in the fall. Our planting season is over here. So we'll definitely be doing our tree planting and finishing up this in the fall. And this is kind of some renderings of what we would like it to look like. It's coming along quite nicely, but as you can see, we'll have walkways. We'll have a very low, unintrusive gate, just for defining the perimeter, not to keep folks out. and it will definitely be open to the public for use. There will be a shade structure here that folks can tend to. All the pavers are permeable pavers, which will add more um, stormwater capacity to the entire site. We're looking at roughly about 57 to 58,000 gallons of stormwater per rain event when this project is complete. So a pretty large amount of water that we're taking off Claiborne Avenue, which is also a hurricane evacuation route. So it does not help if a hurricane evacuation route floods. So we definitely are working to make sure that that corridor stays flood free, especially during our frequent afternoon rainstorms and our frequent hurricanes that we deal with here in New Orleans. Another picture, you see folks out here. As you can see, we're bringing in some very large trees that we brought in with some very large truck and a very large crane, but with the idea being to create instant canopy. There will be saplings here and there throughout the planting plan, but the majority of the trees are going to be pretty much full-grown, mature trees to develop that instant canopy for folks, and won't have to wait for shade as soon as we complete the construction. This project has actually spurred a lot of interest in more green infrastructure projects up and down the Claiborne corridor. As you can also see in the slide, there are several other areas that we are already coming up with program designs, architectural designs to create and replicate the Claiborne Vision to Reality Park in several locations up and down the Claiborne corridor, and also to reforestate the urban landscape here through other projects. We understand that the overpass is not coming down, and there's been debate over it for years and years and years. Our solution is we can't wait for that debate to come to its fruition. We need to develop these stormwater assets, develop these heat island reduction sites so people in the community can have, once it's a safe, clean, productive space that they can use for all sorts of events, and just an area that they can get outside, be in nature in an urban setting. So we look forward to continuing this. We definitely encourage folks to, if you have the opportunity, look at some of your brownfields, look at some of your open spaces, some of your own things, and add to them, whether it be trees, whether it be green infrastructure, anything to help communities manage dealing with our ever increasing heat on the planet, and stormwater and flooding. It's not going away, so we have to be proactive in trying to provide these solutions for our communities. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Todd. We'll pass it over to Jonathan.
Hold on, Jonathan. Okay, I'm out.
Jonathan, you're on mute.
Of course, somebody had to be on mute. It's me today. So how are you, everybody? I can tell you how you are. You're definitely committed to your communities, and that's why you're here today. And it's so important that we have people that are committed so we can do these wonderful things all together to improve the lives of those, especially in need in our urban communities. My name is Jonathan Phillips. As was discussed before, I'm the executive director of Groundwork Elizabeth, and I'm here to talk to you about a few things that we're doing here in our Elizabeth community, and to let you know where Elizabeth is and who's involved in things. And I'll just get right started. Okay, it's not working. Oh, there we go. Okay. So can you imagine a place where everyone has a healthy place to live, work, and play? We do, and we can, and we're working towards it. Groundwork Elizabeth is part of the Groundwork USA network, and thank you, Jalissa and John, for speaking about that. However, we are all, and there's about 25 of us in the system right now. I may stand to be corrected when Jalissa gets back on there, but at least 25 different groundwork trusts, all kind of dedicated to a more sustainable and equitable community for all. We work on projects here in Elizabeth and programs that strive to provide a healthy environment and mitigate environmental issues, like Todd was talking about, that affect those who often bear an unfair burden of environmental justice. And it's specifically what I really wanted to say is we embrace the Groundwork USA philosophy and goals, but we here in Elizabeth and in New Orleans and wherever we are, we all work locally with our community, and our communities are all a little bit different. Speaking of which, where is Elizabeth, New Jersey? So if you've never been to Elizabeth, New Jersey, here's a map. There's the green star right on top of us, right across from Staten Island, not too far from New York City. I'm going to actually see my brother there after this. Only 22 minutes by public transportation, by train. So we are definitely in the New York metropolitan area, very, very densely populated. In fact, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the country. Union County, where we are, is populated by 572,000 people. We have 135,000 documented residents in Elizabeth. Demographically, who are we talking about here? Obviously, a community of great diversity, as many of you probably have as well in yours. This is a little bit out of date. It says 64% are Hispanic Latino. I think it's about 69 to 70% now. 19% Black or African American. We have people that are significantly lower in high school graduation rates, and also lower bachelor degrees, household income, and home ownership rates. And of course, we unfortunately are higher than the state median, people below the poverty level. Therefore, in our brownfield communities, and many of our brownfields have been remediated, but the lasting effects are still here, and long-term issues of environmental justice are affecting those Black and brown communities, usually in a more challenged economic situation, who are in the weakest position to change their circumstances. Let's talk about redlining. And many of your communities probably are redlined. In 1939, the Homeowners Lending Corporation started looking at different communities and neighborhoods and seeing who were best people to lend money to. And obviously, those in the poorest parts of their communities and neighborhoods were redlined. Literally, they were not able to get good loans. And although this practice was discontinued in the mid-60s, the vestiges of this redlining and environmental injustice continue. And that's why Groundwork Elizabeth is here today. So what can we do? Well, we have a climate safe task force, and there's our logo with the sun and the turbines on the left. We do use that a lot. And every time we go into a community project, we bring our little climate safe pledge. And usually one of the children or youth or people that we're talking to will have everybody stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I promise to protect the environment and leave this world a better place than I found it." So people start by speaking, and speaking is maybe one of the first things you do, but you need to do action. So I wanted to bring up to everybody today, there's 3 sample programs and projects that we do here in Elizabeth that help to promote a more equitable, healthy environment. One of them is called Microforests for Macro Solutions. And the next one is a riverbank restoration project called Phil Rizzuto. And the third is engaging, and this was brought up before by Jalissa and also by Todd. Our community needs to be invested in by our youth, our next generation of community leaders, because before you know it, they are going to be our community leaders. So this is a horrible picture. We talked about weather problems, and Hurricane Ida came up the East Coast. I'm sure it was in many of your neighborhoods as well around the country. This is actually, if you look at that black roof there, that's the first floor was totally flooded here. We did lose 4 people in the city due to this flooding event. One of them, one of our youth was actually in this building, and she managed to crawl out through a window. That's the only way she got out. So this flooding is not something we just only talk about. And we know people are affected, but these are individuals that we actually know personally that are being affected by it. New Jersey gets 48 inches of rain on average per year. The U.S. average is 38 inches. I think there's more in New Orleans, right, Todd? You'll tell us later. We have heat islands as well as flooding. Our average annual temperature has increased 3.5 degrees since 1895. And by 2050, that increase could double. Our air quality, we are located right near Newark Liberty Airport, New Jersey Turnpike, a lot of other roadways, the Elizabeth Seaport and Port Authority facilities. We have a lot of diesel particulates, carbon monoxide, and industrial pollution. So I just wanted to paint the picture that we're really, what we're doing here is needed. Again, this is a chart that could be anywhere in the country, but as we know, downtowns are hotter and have poorer air quality generally than rural or suburban communities. So the first thing to do after you realize that we have all these problems is to plan how to get out of it or how to at least mitigate it. And we have something called the Groundwork Elizabeth Microfarm and Environmental Center. Jalissa actually was speaking about urban agriculture in the Groundwork program. We do that. It's one of our large programs as well, but our headquarters is right here. And we have some offices on the Microfarm and Environmental Center where we put our heads together and come up with ways to improve our community. Again, the first one I wanted to talk about was microforests. And we have, in partnership with Groundwork USA right now, and a number of local partners, we are planning to, we've already done 2.5, we're up, we want to do 3 of these microforests. And this was our first one before we put it in ground. Looks pretty innocent, but we had to remove about 1.5 feet of soil here in about a 40 by 60 foot space. Then put the right type of soil in. We worked with conservationists from the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, biologists. We just laid the trees out here. This is what it looked like before, and this is pretty much what it looks like today. So what are microforests? Well, they're small demonstration forests, and they can actually reduce, obviously, heat islands. They catch rain. They increase the infiltration of deposited precipitation, reduce the stress on urban sewer systems by limiting the risk of hazardous combined sewer overflows and erosion. And urban trees, like microforests, but even in a broader sense, urban trees control heat islands, of course, by providing shade and filter out CO2 and harmful airborne particulates. These microforests will reduce that hot temperature we talked about before. Our goal is to reduce the temperature in Elizabeth through microforests and other urban tree planting by 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit in the next 20 years. We want to improve our air quality, and we're using handheld air quality sensors to measure that. Flood control, obviously, we've got this horrible situation in flooding. We don't want it to continue to happen. We're going to try to do everything we can to reduce it. So we're using rain gauges to make sure that our microforests and our rain gardens, which are contingent to microforests, will continue to absorb rainwater. And what else? What else do microforests do? They reduce stress, anxiety, solitude, cardiovascular, and respiratory diseases. And there's a lot of stress right now. And maybe you're looking at your phone right now while I'm talking, and those phones are always with us. and they're stressing us out. And just by taking a bath in nature in a forest, you can reduce that stress. And also soil stability. Listen, we're in urban environments, and every little bit of soil is so valuable here. And we're continuing to work with professional biologists on the soil content. We do have in the upper right-hand corner is a interpretive signage. So people will see a small microforest and say, "What is this?" And we're going to gain their interest by teaching them what it is. We actually have a contingent of Groundwork USA Trust. I just spoke to a guy by the name of Bruce Strubble here from Groundwork USA. A number of trusts are coming up to Elizabeth to talk about microforests and maybe help us build our next one in late September. But in the meantime, we're building them here with our community, with our youth. They're into it. They're digging in, literally, and they're taking care of it. They're understanding more about trees, what trees can do. This is a we'll call this is a semi microforest, because we're not removing the soil in this one. This is in a park-like setting already. And microforests also help us with a larger sense of urban trees. And we have groups coming into us, planting with us. This was Ramapo College, which is 30, 40 miles away. They wanted to come to Elizabeth and help us plant trees. So we welcome that dedication. I also promised two other things. One was restoration of erosion. Part of the problem for that flooding in that picture was this is something called Phil Rizzuto Park. This is the Trotters branch of the Elizabeth River. The Elizabeth River is the major river in Elizabeth, and Trotters branch is where we are working right now to reduce erosion, which is causing flooding, which actually helped cause the flooding that you saw in that picture. This is one example of a stream bed. This is actually in pretty good condition. These two pictures will give maybe a little bit better picture of what's going on here. That bridge is actually in jeopardy of falling into the water, and we are actually digging into this right now. There's a group of our youth who are just recently OSHA certified, and they're actually rolling boulders into the river, and we will firm up the riverbank that way. And they're learning a lot. They're getting hot. Yes, they're getting hot this summer, but they're getting hot in many ways. They're improving their environment. It's a group of us just a couple days ago, just before we got to work. So, like I said, by working on conservation, we also are able to engage our community through events and programs talking about our urban waters. So here's a group on the left of about 50 people that had a river walk along the Elizabeth River Trail, which is a project that I guess ages ago, Jalissa introduced me about the Elizabeth River Trail. We started that process in 2005. We didn't finish until 2012. We got an NJ. I saw somebody ask a question before. We had an NJDOT grant that helped us get started on that. And here we have on the right side our Groundwork tents on our Earth Day event. Right next to that erosion, you can see it, bringing people closer to the water, understanding what our issues are, and getting them involved. I just like this picture because it's you can see. I can't believe people are still smoking, but they are. So we do cleanups along the river, and we always find cigarette butts. It's still there. But people are able to walk. You can see that guy George on the right side, and behind him is a trail. And on the left of him is a fence. Like Todd was talking about, a fence. It's there so people don't fall into the river, but they can get a good view that although this is channelized because the Army Corps of Engineers did that in the 70s because it flooded, it is really a river. It's meant for people to be engaged in understanding urban waters. So we have other events along this. This is the non-channelized portion of the Elizabeth River, although they have these large berms. We did the Great American backyard bird count here with our youth and community members, getting them closer to the waters and understanding what has to be done. Again, our Earth Day event, one of our partners from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Anna Harris, the Deputy Director of the Lenape Complex, is here speaking. This was in April. What a beautiful day we had for Earth Day this year. We're just lucky. The year before that, it was, I think, 50 degrees and practically snowing. And the last part of what I wanted to talk about is, again, we want to get the entire community involved, but especially our youth, our next generation of community leaders. They're the ones who are planting these microforests with us. They're the ones who are planting urban agriculture. They're getting people out. They're getting their peers engaged and interested in what can be done. We're building a next generation of community leaders. They're part of our climate safe task force. They're probably the most passionate, and you have to be passionate in this business to get things done. And it's great to see our next generation of community leaders getting so impassioned. Here they are actually with, and this is actually a Groundwork USA program that they did. It was a social media campaign about we invest in our planet for an X future, and you filled it in. And here's 4 fill-ins: a cleaner, a healthy, a better, and a safe future. And again, getting youth impassioned helps us get our work done. I like this picture because on the right side, it's hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. This is what our Mayor's Youth Council did. And part of our youth programs is a component that actually meets with our mayor once a month, talk about issues, and they're heard by the mayor, and our municipality helps us do the work because we are speaking to people who are policymakers. So quick recap. What do? Improve environmental justice, and especially our most burdened communities with more trees, specifically microforests. We're working to restore and repair riverbanks, which are flooding us and hurting us in many ways, enhancing our natural environment. And we're getting our community involved, especially at the youth level, to continue the progress. Thank you very much. And I guess Todd and I, Jalissa and John will take questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan and Todd, for that. I'm just going to give you a little virtual round of applause here, and I hope everyone will join me as we transition into this Q&A session. So if you haven't already, I see some in there, please pop some questions into the chat. We have a few as well. We've got such a great list of questions here for you guys. So Jonathan, you did start by saying that you did receive some support from DOT, your Department of Transportation. Todd, that question was originally asked for you on Claiborne. Did you guys have any support from DOT on that?
Yes, the Louisiana Department of Transportation, not in the form of financial support, but we're very HCS, which is Healthy Community Services, worked closely with the DOTD to get the first portion of the project permitted. And that was kind of the extent. The funding for the project came from ICS, Institute for Sustainable Communities, and phase 2 came from the Bezos Earth Fund. But no financial investment from either the city or the state.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And I think so many lessons to be learned there in terms of how those kind of capital layers all come together. And you, Jonathan, and Todd, and everyone across the Trust Network is doing so much of that layering. And I'm sure people could speak for days on that as they try to fund their own projects in their own communities. We have another question to Jonathan from Kate. Shout out Groundwork USA. Can you tell us more about how you acquired the land for the microforest, and what's the average cost per microforest, if you've got that info?
Great question. First of all, microforests, and I failed to say, there's something called the Miyawaki method. This was a practice that was developed in Japan. I urge people to go and check out Miyawaki method by going online. In terms of the microforest properties, we don't own anything. It's on public land. The first one was done on a library property. Second one was done on a second one was done on a housing authority property, and the third one is done on a county riverbank property, so a public land, a park property. Average cost, if you're doing it now, again, a microforest is not just planting trees. It's actually making sure that you have the right soil involved and that you have the right situation that will allow the trees to thrive. And it's not just planting the trees, it's making sure you have leaf litter and things to make them thrive as well. So an average cost of a microforest, depending how large you make it, is between $50,000 and $75,000. Could go higher in a larger one, could go a little bit less in a smaller one, but it's worth every penny because it's a demonstration project. It's usually right where people live, especially in urban areas.
That's really great. Thanks so much for that, Jonathan. So want to kind of zoom out now. We've heard about the reasons for, your projects, why you got into them and how you did them and what some of the successes of those projects have been. Can you share with folks on the call today what some of the barriers or potential obstacles that communities might expect to encounter when they're looking to implement nature-based solutions for brownfields land reuse?
For us here in New Orleans, I guess in other places, it's one of the biggest barriers is working. A lot of our projects are done in what's called the public right of way, whether it be state-owned property, whether it be city-owned property. And there are multiple agencies here to manage about a 4-foot space. So permitting has always been a challenge here in New Orleans, and getting multiple departments, especially when you're doing multi-phase projects, getting multiple city departments to get on the same page, and then working with them to get it permitted. We have a lot of permitting rules, and we have some inconsistencies like most places with those rules. So that was really a big challenge that I'd like to point out if you're looking to do these type projects, is get ahead of that early, because it can definitely hamper your production schedule, getting your permitting process and all that in place.
Yep, trying to. We're working on public land here, so I guess the issue is you have to make sure that you have a good relationship with those that own the land that you want to work on.
That's really helpful. And I think a kind of natural follow-up to that is from Shada Islam. They said, I'm wondering what the planning phase looks like for these large and impactful projects. How long does it take to plan for them? And which, if any, external organizations should you absolutely include in those conversations?
So the planning phase for us, as most folks, I have a master's degree in community economic development. So that's based in working with communities and communities, finding out what the community needs are from the community members. So the Claiborne project and the sister project, which would be our Toro Street project, where we are revitalizing several blocks in New Orleans on a street called Toro Street that has zero drainage infrastructure. They had the old drainage ditches, so it's really an environmental justice nightmare. So the planning process, we will have multiple, on average, about 3 to 4 visiting sessions with the community, where we lay out the project, and it's really an opportunity for the community to design all the way down to, hey, we're going to put a tree here, you want a tree here, do you want a parking pad? So it's really an opportunity for the community to really take ownership of that project, because they're driving the bus. We're the tip of the spear when it comes to installing the project, but the community, all of our projects are community led, excuse me, and based in multiple visiting sessions, and work with the community all the way through to construction completion.
Yeah, I'd like to say that it really it helps to have partnerships in your planning process. Sometimes that happens right away. Sometimes it's harder to happen. Our riverbank restoration project, for example, we started talking with people. Actually, it was a private sector company that said, hey, we can help you out here in 2015. As you can see, we just got started on it this year. It took a while. We had the USDA. We had a buy-in from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, who actually did the engineering plans. Then, of course, being in urban municipalities, you must get your permits, us from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So you have to line everything up. It sometimes takes a long time. it depends on your relationships, like I said, with your community. If you have really good ones first, it'll make things happen quicker.
That's really helpful. Thanks to you both. One thing that we're curious about is if you can talk about how to ensure kind of the long-term sustainability of these projects, thinking about maintenance, right, of nature-based solutions, particularly in underserved communities. Can you guys talk about what that looks like?
For us, we have two programs. We have our Green Team program, which is our 14 to 18-year-old high school program. They come to us 2 or 3 days a week and also work on Saturdays doing green infrastructure, but more about creating environmental stewards, and really introducing young folks to the environment and environmental justice and those things. And then we have what's called our ground crew. That's climate resilience environmental workforce, and that is our workforce development program. All of our projects are built by the ground crew. We don't, for most of the project, in the Claiborne project was 99% built with our own forces. When you talk about green infrastructure maintenance, what I think people should push for, and it's starting to, that ball is starting to roll down the hill a little bit here, is that, yeah, we can build all these green infrastructure projects, but if no one's maintaining them, they become useless, they don't work. So working with the different granting agencies, the different funding agencies to put 2 to 3, 4 years of maintenance into these projects and into these contracts, where our young folks who are trained in green infrastructure and certified in green infrastructure can get actual hands-on experience for 1, 2, 3 years of doing this GI maintenance as we manage all the sites that we build. We've actually been steadfast here, and if maintenance isn't included, it's not it doesn't make it up to the number one priority on our list. I will put we create projects, we do bids, we do fundraising, but maintenance, you really need to push on that maintenance piece to make sure it's included in your projects.
Yeah, I'm going to echo exactly what Todd said. There was an edict way back when in Groundwork, the Groundwork USA program. We want to have a project look as good in 5 years as it does on the day that you put it in the ground. When you see a beautiful job, a beautiful, incredible thing that Todd did, just even in the state that it's in right now, it's easier to actually get that done than it is to maintain it, I think. So as Todd said, we got to have maintenance programs. That's really what sustainability is all about.
That's really great. Thank you both. I think connected to that, there's a question about whether or not you faced any pushback when you were kind of designing either the microforest or the vision to reality projects. If you did, how did you deal with that? Where did it come from? How did you navigate that? If not, what do you think helped you avoid that? I can imagine maybe maintenance or lack thereof would be one place where community members might come at you guys. But can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, you want to go, John? Or?
Go ahead, Todd.
Okay. So in a perfect world, you work with the community and everybody's, this is great, let's do it. But we all know that that's not the reality. For the large bioswale project, we had we had total community buy-in, no pushback. But during our visioning sessions for our Toro Street projects, there was some pushback. But I don't want a tree here. I want this there. I don't want to do that. Why does he get that? Why does she get that? So you work through the process, and a lot of it is education. If you have this tree in front, this will provide shade for your house. Your house won't be so hot. If you decide to have a permeable parking pad, these are the parameters. So it's really working with them on an individual basis, and it takes time. It's not something you rush into, and you have to hear everybody because in the end, it's their community. They live there. They will have to continue to live there. So they need to be heard, and then not just lip service, just show tangible. Hey, we heard you here. We're going to move this over here, or hey, we didn't think about that. Let's add that here. So it's really trying to have an honest dialogue and coming to a group decision as we do these projects.
So regarding our microforest project, there's been really no pushback in any negative way about that. But street trees, the way you're really going to cool, the way you're really going to cool an urban environment is by planting trees in areas where there are no trees. And that's when you may get some pushback. I have an older thing that we did about 10 years ago from the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. We got a large grant. We got 1,300 street trees that we planted, or let's put it this way. We tried to plant in Elizabeth. And some people, it's amazing, but some people did not understand the value of a tree. And other people were worried about the leaves falling off the trees. So you need to get that education. You need people to understand that a cooler environment means a healthier environment, mentally as well as physically. And once you get that, that's the harder part. Doing the work, I think, is easier than getting the community buy-in and making the community understand, especially those recalcitrant people. There's only a few of them, right? But they can make a stink. So
yeah, I'd just like to add a little caveat, and sometimes they get their way, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? They don't want a tree in front of their house. They don't want this. Let's come up with some other options. And you have to be flexible when you're doing this kind of work.
Really well said. Yeah, communication and flexibility, two key dynamics in community development projects, right? Thank you for that. Todd, this one is for you, but Jonathan, of course, feel free to jump in. Could you talk about the overlap between your Vision to Reality project and job training, right? A lot of these people on the call here are very likely interested, thinking about Justice 40, thinking about workforce training. How do you kind of build these green infrastructure sites and support job training and local economic development simultaneously?
Okay. Well, floating in the back all the way around all the time is that we're creating these projects for young people to get trained and help the communities in which they live in. So they're all kind of integral. So our ground crew program was up to 13. This specific project, my good buddy Ryan Madley, who I think is on the call, works at LA Green Corps, and we were able to bring some of his graduates into our program, Workforce Development, to help build the Vision to Reality site. That then turned into, hey, let's try to be the feeder here, or the feeder organization for other workforce development programs that are looking for. I think we're pretty unique here in New Orleans. We have several great workforce development, green infrastructure programs, but I believe we're the only ones that are actually doing these large scale community projects where we are training and employing. We start our program of great ground crew with $20 an hour. So they make good money. They're able to build a block on their resume. We don't do the 8 to 10 week program thing. I've done that a lot in my career, and I just don't believe that works. I think you have to make real investment in the folks that come through your program, and that takes 2 to 3 to 4 years. And designing it so we will always have projects for people who want to learn green infrastructure and workforce development. There is an actual project that we will be able to leave a tangible resilience asset in the communities that we were built through our workforce development. So it's an integral part of everything that we do here when it comes to green infrastructure, solar, and workforce development here.
I'm just going to tie this back to the program, to the Groundwork Trust program, to everybody. This is maybe a good way to sort of close it out. If you look at Todd's hat, there's a triangle on his hat, and that's the Groundwork logo. We're actually international. That logo was designed in England. There's no accident that our logo is a triangle. It's 3 sides, and the three sides stand for people, places, and prosperity. So that's what we have to do: building our communities better, building them back better, cleaner, more equitable, greener. And again, the Groundwork program can help us do that. We appreciate the support we get from our Groundwork USA partners, and with our other trusts, talking to Todd and all of us. It's great.
What a great way to close this out. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Todd. I'm going to turn it over to Jaleesa to close out our session today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and Todd, for sharing all this information with this audience, this community. Thank you, John, for facilitating this. And thank you all for joining us today to talk about this conversation. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or John or Jonathan and Todd, and sign up for our Equitable Development newsletter to get updates on the recording for this webinar and the slides and any other future webinars. And I also popped the link for our Equitable Development Technical Assistance Program in the chat. So once again, yeah, thank you all, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.